I'm joined by Joseph Minnick, and very soon, even though we can hear him in the background on a phone call right now, I hope it's not private. We are
Oh
live
no, it's
streaming Dale Stenberg's phone call. He will be back here in a moment, and there he is.
there's Dale.
Oh, did we already go live?
We
We are
did.
Oh,
we're
my
completely
bad.
live,
This is
but
like,
that is completely okay. And the good news is most people listen to this after the fact, anyways. And I
yes.
Yeah,
doubt
we
anyone's
won't
gonna.
edit that out though. It's the best
Well,
part.
that was our good friend Shane Morris. And
Oh, I like him.
yes, Shane's on his way over here. So we're doing a symposium tonight on Brad Littlejohn's newest book called The Freedom, which we were going to
Mm.
talk about, but something happened and we're not. So now we're going to talk about why materialism is not enough.
We just need to come back at midnight with Brad after the symposium's
There you
over
go.
Yes.
and do one more.
Yes.
And we'll bring Shane also. You guys can all sit in this one camera frame
Oh,
because
dude. Yeah.
that is the
Mo-
best
we
kind
get
of
the
vibes.
most clicks in the history of X, brother.
Honestly, I think with you guys together, it would be amazing. Well, because the freedom topic with Brad didn't work out for today, and I'm actively moving a camera for fun, we decided to opt to one of our other topics, which was on the question of materialism. I think all of us are reading a book on this. I was about to grab it, but I couldn't find it. On this topic right now of kind of materialism, and is that really enough for the full scope of life to find meaning, to find joy, to find goodness? We did talk about Boethius, and Boethius answers resoundingly no to this question. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe we're advancing on that topic, but I think a lot of us probably assume, given our 2025 moment, that just more technology, just more money, just more stuff will invariably lead to a better, happier, more ascendant life. But
Mm.
power, prestige, stuff, all of this, because it can be lost, can't it doesn't appear to be able to give final satisfaction. You need something that transcends space and time. Whereas my good friend George Grant, the Canadian philosopher, not the theonomist in the U.S., which I now have to clarify all the time, says beyond space and time there is order,
Mm.
capital O. So that's kind of the introduction to this topic. So Dale, you run a school,
Mm-hmm.
and part of it is kind of premised on this idea of classical education, humanities, all this kind of stuff. And part of that is that, I mean, it's almost baked into it that materialism, efficiency, productivity is not a sufficient condition for the flourishing life. So
Mm.
maybe you just have something you could say about that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We are all very, very, very much materialists.
Mm.
Like we just breathe the air of materialism. And so I say that to open it up because even a community that's shaped around the humanities, the great books, Christianity, spiritual disciplines, ordering the affections, even all of us are just deeply battling materialism.
Mm.
And I think in some ways that we don't even really recognize because, like, we're rich. Everyone is filthy rich in America. If you've got a house and a car on the global scene, you're a rich person. And the American dream is to, like, get the six-figure salary, 9 to 5, have a big house, couple cars, 2.6 kids, take a couple vacations, and like that's like you have arrived.
What happened to the point four kid?
Oh, is it point four?
Well,
I don't
no, the
remember what it was.
2.6. There's a point 0.4 remainder. I'm just, what
Yes, yeah,
happened
they
to
have to
that
grow
kid?
into the full.
Right.
Anyway,
Sorry,
uh,
I made a dumb joke, and you were being
I
profound.
was trying,
Yep.
brother. Yeah, so yeah, so that's kind of just like recognizing it, and then what could you say about it? I mean, who was it that I forget the saint's name. He like, oh, it's Saint Benedict
Mm.
retreats to a castle to like pray, uh, gives up food, water, just like leaves all the comforts to pray for his people to survive. And like it worked, I don't want to say it was just Benedict, but that level of commitment to your conviction in the order, capital O, beyond space and time, is something that I don't think we see a lot of anymore because we really don't have to. And one of Joe's things that he's been talking about forever with this sort of like understanding atheism in the modern age, we don't have to dance to the rain god because we can just go to Publix or wherever your supermarket is and buy onions and
Mm.
carrots, right, and chicken broth. So we're deeply disconnected from those things which I guess you could say pre-modern age would just help our minds grab a hold of the fact of the immaterial world, for lack of a better term. So I guess all I'm saying is diagnosing stuff. But I wonder if part of the reason that it's hard for us to have a conversation about materialism is because we're all kind of materialists, and we're all kind of materialists because we live in very comfortable circumstances which don't require our dependence on God per se, if that makes sense.
It's interesting because in some sense, I think, yeah, the prompt was materialism, but we're using two different definitions, I
Mm-hmm.
suppose, but they're not unrelated. Some of the framing has been materialism relative to wealth,
Right.
yeah, like attachment to material itself, but then materialism as a metaphysical description of the basic thing of reality. And just to affirm something Dale said there, even if you think you're not a materialist, one of the questions becomes, even when you think of the deeper immaterial metaphysical concepts, is the bubble that comes up in your mind a kind of materialist description of however that works? Is it still the kind of paradigm of explanation, if you will? But they are distinct things. We tend toward both of them. It would be worth saying though that they're related things,
Mm-hmm.
which is to say the attentional structure which is so adequated to the material order and a concern with the manipulation, production of, and what I can get out of the material order is both going to incubate a civilizational hive mind toward a value of material as such, kind of pure accumulation, keeping up with the Joneses sort of thing. But that world is also a world in which a materialist ontology is rendered plausible, and so most of the sociologists of unbelief do make this connection that certain kinds of lifestyles and certain kinds of predictive factors like college education, being very well to do, there's a couple of other factors, all of those actually predict, they almost predict whether faith is going to be plausible, whether you're going to lose faith in some way, rather than being, anyway, something like
Well,
that.
it's
But
like
there's,
it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the
Right.
kingdom of heaven.
yeah,
This is the last thing I say. I'm glad you clarified. So Joe and I recent finished, and I don't know if you've read it yet, Wyatt.
all things are full of
All
gods.
things are full of
That was the book
gods.
I was
That was the
referencing.
book he was referencing.
I'm.
Oh,
I don't know how far through I am. I want to say I'm about a third, maybe through.
I finished it. I think Dale's almost
Oh,
done.
there
I'm
it is.
done.
Oh, you're done.
Yeah, I
Okay, so
finished
you're
it.
behind, Wyatt.
Yeah, I'm behind. I got FOMO now that I'm fear of missing out of all the cool knowledge I missed.
Yeah, but that book is basically Hart just from every conceivable angle eviscerating a sort of
Right.
emergence theory, materialist accounting of, consciousness, life. Yes, there it is.
There it is.
So if you're interested, pick that up because this is Hart, and I know he's kind of a controversial figure, but this is him at his best. And he's not that controversial to Christians, really, in that book.
Oh.
In this
It's
particular
like,
book, most of what
In the book, no.
people find objectionable in Hart is left out of the book.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
that I think we could say, and one of the things that's really helpful about the book for those who are caught within a materialist metaphysic, especially that a tendency in the mind to work that way. One of the things that I think is so useful in the book is that he helps you distinguish, and we all kind of know how to distinguish this, but he helps you distinguish an immaterialism of form and matter from a kind of Cartesian immaterialism. So many of the conundra that come up I remember, in fact, early in my Christian life, I called myself a Christian materialist, but it was really just because I couldn't imagine, I wasn't using the term properly. It was because I couldn't imagine what it meant to have a soul that wasn't related to my body. And so where my body is. And of course, what I was doing was thinking like a Cartesian and thinking of a
Yeah.
soul as this thing that you take out of the body. Whereas to see, to
You
really
are a
come to
soul.
grips with the fact that the argument against materialism isn't about getting out of the body and then, it's almost thinking materialistically to think that way, to
Isn't
get out of the body into some
right,
other, as it were, space full of
right.
black or the void or something.
Mm,
You're still thinking spatially, you're still thinking a bit materialistically. Form is something higher than
Mhm.
matter, but you find it's given away and only ever found given away to the material order. And
yep.
so a lot of times when people are tempted toward materialism or physicalism, sometimes it's simply a rejection of Cartesianism, and they've kind of unimagined or left unimagined. I think some of that more married sense of what the immaterial and the material are, that is
Mhm.
part of the Christian tradition, especially.
Hmm. So just kind of going back to kind of re-summarize something. So we have materialism as the draw to material things, and then materialism as what reality is. It's all that can be described is summed up in material things. And so those are the two categories, but they're correlated.
Mhm.
You called yourself a materialistic Christian. I can only think, isn't it like a Madonna song? I'm a material girl, or whatever.
Yeah,
She's like,
yeah,
Yes.
um,
she got all the
she got
money, and
you.
I
You
just, yeah,
adopted her
I don't know.
metaphysics before
You got the
TBH.
hat.
It was
I got the
Madonna.
hat. Yeah.
Yeah, you got the hat. Um, and so that's a really important distinction. I agree though that they are so intrinsically related. If you think what is good and will make you happy is accessible only to the five senses,
Right.
then of course you're going to be materialistic. You're going to
Mhm.
find value in wealth, prestige, power, or sensuality, which I'm pretty sure is the four things that Boethius talks about.
Yeah.
But if there are things that are beyond space and time, beyond the material accessible points we can get to, well, then you might actually find a good that is higher than that, that can
Mhm.
Yeah.
order the material goods towards that higher good. Uh,
Mhm.
we call that God. You
Yep.
also mentioned Cartesianism, and I have a hankering suspicion that not everyone will know exactly what you meant by that, and the distinction between body and soul that is that's very Nietzschean,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. So
yeah,
so
I'm
maybe
glad you
just
pointed that
summarize
out.
that because I think that's a really important point. I think.
Yeah, and I think one thing worth saying there is I am sometimes when you teach about a philosopher, what you need to do is say, I'm teaching the textbook account. I am not speaking as an expert
Right.
on Descartes, because of course when you hang around Davenant, you'll bump into people who really know Descartes way better than I do, and they're going to say that's not the real Descartes. And okay, what do I know? Maybe they're
But they
correct.
received
In any case, at a
teaching,
kind
you
of a
know.
pedagogical pop level, Descartes makes this interesting distinction between man as a thinking thing. That's what man really is. He divides reality up into extended things and thinking things. My body is an extended thing. It's extended in space, and there's another kind of thing called a thinking thing. And what you wind up having, and there's other complexities there, but effectively what you have set up then are kind of two very separated out aspects of the human, where the thinking thing is the really what you are. The body part is kind of we could make qualifications, I'm sure, but what you wind up having then is all these problems of how do body and soul relate. They're kind of separated things that are brought back together, and then there of course becomes the famous interaction problem. How does something going on in the soul causally relate to the body, and what's going to happen in later developments are all these kind of conundra of like, well, if the thinking part of me is the invisible part and the body part is this other part, why do I have all these internal sensations, feelings, and these sorts of things that are kind of internal? They're part of it. Seems like my thought life, and yet they seem so affected by my body. So how does all that, all those sorts of things come
Right.
out in the history of the Christian tradition? While there is a concept of the possibility of the soul surviving the death of the body, it's not because the soul is as such. The soul is so ordered to the body naturally in the Christian tradition, and especially in the developed Christian tradition, that you really want to think of it more as a kind of structure, a form, a living principle given away given away entire, that's overstating it, but given away to the body. So it's not like there's a body and a soul then put inside of a body.
Stuffed
The
inside of it.
soul
Right.
is actually manifested in the material icon of the body. Where do you find my
Ooh.
soul? It's shining out in this thing right here.
Yeah,
And
that's important.
yeah, and I think for the Christian, those are always married. It's very mysterious that there's a possibility of a kind of separation, but what you really want to think of is not man as part body, part soul, and they're kind of added together, but that rather it's more like two ends of a magnetic pole. All the fireworks are actually the kind of weird, the weird fusion, the weird unity that we are as form and matter, thinking, a rational agent as a body. It's the unity of those two things that makes all the metaphysical and human fireworks.
Which is so important, because you're not going to find like the soul particle or something.
Right.
Yeah.
The soul DNA. Oh, that's where it is. The mind is actually just a deeper molecule or something. One of the most important books on this topic that I think evinces, which is just what you're saying, is Gregory of Nyssa's book. It's the Christian Phaedo. It's called On the Soul, I believe, where he talks with his sister Macrina. And it's a Platonic dialogue, but he's the learner and Macrina is the philosopher. Just like Phaedo, which is more or less on the immortality of the soul before Socrates dies. And it's brilliant, but at one point, Macrina / Gregory say, your soul is so indelibly connected to your body that, yes, okay, so you die, your body decomposes, a cow eats it, it turns into a tree, whatever. But there's going to be a real sense in which your soul is so indelibly linked to that stuff that in the resurrection it will still be, your body. And somehow we have to, and this might be slightly off topic, but like, whatever we want to say about Paul, he has probably been around for a couple thousand years with the Lord. I don't know how he is before the resurrection. That might be a shock to me, but he is. And yet he will have the resurrection body, as Jesus certainly did. So there is this kind of irreducible union of these two things. Not two things. That's Cartesian, isn't it? These two.
There are two. I think the way certain Thomists will talk about it today is kind of like two principles of the one man. It's like, so this is why in the Thomist tradition you could have such a rich account of the emotions and really place them in interesting ways, even though your emotions are experienced internally and they're kind of inflected through your rationality. What we would always talk about is, where are the various aspects of us principled? There, we all find them all maxed together, but are my thoughts principled in the formal structure or in the embodied structure? Are my feelings, in which specific feelings, are they principled in the body or in the mind, and that sort of thing? To be a human is just to have all of them swimming together, but we can, and an interesting one is gender. If there's only one form of man, the formal, there's just one form man. So Jesus can die and save women because we have he is formally united to our nature. At least that's the theological explanation of the church. But what's interesting is gender then is, again, we feel our gender very internally. I feel like a man on the inside. Dale feels like a man on all those sorts of things. But the principle of gender is the body. It's principled in the body. And what Aquinas has this interesting account where gender is kind of like the first accident. It's like the first cell split of we are formally united in the soul, but it's like we're immediately kind of differentiated in this mode of being a person that is male or female. But that principledness is in the body, and that's So there's all sorts of interesting ways that a lot of these things get handled in the tradition because it's holding something together rather than kind of pulling parts that are apart and putting them together as externals.
We should do a fireside chat on that once I think about it more, because I thought a little bit about this before, about the idea of the essence of being human, and then the idea of gender, however you want to describe that, being embodied, and yet, as you noted, Christ as a human being dies for human beings.
Yeah.
So there are some interesting things that are happening there that would be worth talking about.
Yep.
But I don't want to talk about it on the fly because I didn't pre-think through it. I'll say something incredibly dumb if I try to. I think for me, I know we're not really doing. We should probably do a whole review on this for one of our stuff. But like,
I'd love that. Yeah.
I do think. I haven't read it just recently, but he has some interesting proposals. He kind of flips the script a little bit, which is helpful to me, just to kind of get me thinking that most of us, we all assume we're material beings, and then we infer the possibility of a soul. Where DBH is more or less beginning with we're souls, and then you infer the possibility of material.
Yeah, he's almost saying like everything is mind, and the material is. He's not denying that the material is not there.
No, it's just a different framework. Yeah.
It's like
it's apprehension. It's the unity. One of the best chapters in it is on the unity of apprehension. Your life, what's really going on in your life, is that all of your everything you are experiencing right now is had in the receptacle of a self that is experiencing all of it as a unity.
Right.
And what faculty organizes everything into that unity to make for itself a whole world. And so what you have in this older world is like, mind is just what you're always immediately, it is the most scientific, concrete fact of your life. You can't get outside of it. And it is inside, and effectively for him, the material order is sort of the iconographizing. He didn't use that word. I'm making it up on the fly. Hopefully it takes off. Iconographizing. That'll be the word of the OED 2025. It's going to be the word of the year. The material, it's iconographizing the basically mind into the material order in some structured way. It's more complicated than that, but that's largely how he thinks of it.
I think even it's this idea, this chasm that's uncrossable by quantitative methods of a qualitative existence of consciousness was also a pretty persuasive argument.
Very,
I remember.
yep. That's right.
But there's a number. But at the end of the day, I think whoever you are, at one level, if you're a Christian, this should be obvious, notionally at least, that there are things beyond space and time, but beyond the material order, that give significance and meaning to us. But then I do think a lot of us live functionally as if materialistic monism is the way things are.
Yep.
And that might be something that you, Dale, encounter more in your educational work, because one of the things that I know you're not like doing it quite this literally, but as you expose people to things like justice and truth and stable truths that are outside of merely the five senses, you're almost having to sort of persuade people, probably are Christians, that there is something beyond materialism that's worth living for.
Yep.
Yeah.
So tell me, like, how does that work for you?
Yeah. Or you could, and I mean, that is an issue. And then there's another problem, which is that because I believe in the spiritual or the immaterial, they become functionally Gnostic about. So it's like the material's bad. So, don't, and I don't think you see a lot of this anymore, but there's the evangelical kind of, infatuation with poverty. Like if you got a lot of money, you're supposed to give it away to like churches or whatever, because that's doing the spiritual thing, right? And the two seem at odds. That's kind of what I bump into more than anything.
Yeah.
So actually,
well,
it's
still
like,
around. My brother-in-law is a pastor. I'll let you continue, but this is really important. He often tells young men, you need to worry more about money than you do as a
Right.
pastor, because they don't have any money to support a family, and they're like,
Right.
well, I'll just love Jesus, read the Bible, and not have a job.
yes, yeah, right, yes, and really, it's like, no. The thing, like we talked about Boethius last time, the 4 or 5 things that Boethius talks about, depending on how you carve it up, one of them is wealth, and then sensual pleasure, fame, honor, power. Boethius doesn't say, Lady Philosophy doesn't say those things are bad.
No.
She just says you can't actually get goodness because pursuing any one of those, because goodness is God and God is not divisible. So if you pursue goodness, then those things are where we experience goodness in this created order, actually. So they are good, and they're good for your soul, right? As long as they're treated according to their telos or their natures or whatever. And so that's kind of like where I go most of the time. It's convincing people that they can actually pursue a happy life as long as they recognize that all of these things are only ever found in their fullness in God, who is goodness. And that brings meaning to everything. That brings meaning to, the way that you dress. Joe has suspenders on.
That's right.
He's participating in divine goodness with,
Yes.
with the suspenders.
I'm in suspension and disbelief.
But then things don't become arbitrary. Like what you do with your life means something deeply, deeply, deeply significant, like eternally significant. So you appreciate things more, and your life is less vapid and sort of fleeting and ephemeral.
Mm.
This is what Christianity gives humanity. I mean, it's the truth of reality, but it's also emotionally and psychologically fulfilling because all of the stuff around us matters. So I know I'm kind of veering away from what you said, but you know,
Veer away.
yeah, I mean that to your point though, however, and this is what I've been thinking about lately, is I was talking Joe and I were talking yesterday about this when he got into town. You know, when you gratify the flesh, you sort of exercise the flesh muscle. And that necessarily depletes like the soul muscle. But when you exercise the soul, then it makes the soul muscle stronger, but takes from the flesh muscle or something like that. And the goal is to do both well, right?
Hmm.
Because your body, you're like you said, you're gonna have your body forever. Jesus has his body forever. It means something that we have bodies, uh, but we can also probably fall in. We could probably pursue habits that strengthen the soul muscle more than we do, and maybe we don't understand what that looks like precisely because we are so comfortable in the world.
Yeah, and I also think like while Lady Wisdom doesn't say that like power, prestige, all that kind of stuff is bad, we also have to recognize they have to be real goods. So
Right.
sometimes we're trying to pursue power in a vicious way, or
Right.
prestige, which ends up being a kind of vain glory versus real glory. So Paul certainly says in Romans 2 that we should pursue glory, honor, and immortality with great patience. And so we should pursue those things, but glory is a good work done, honor is credit you get for good work done. And I think most of us probably because we don't know or pursue the good often are trying to achieve power and fame through vicious
Right.
means. Vicious in the old sense of vice filled. And I think that's where we probably have to have a good distinction. Like, yeah, these things are not bad, but if you're trying to have power at the expense of harming others,
Right.
or you want to exploit the poor for your, you know,
Yeah, if they're
big
an end
Ferrari
in
or whatever.
themselves and not access to the whole, which is
Yeah,
goodness itself, which is God, then
right.
you're actually grabbing nothing because that's impossible.
Yeah, like profit. I was talking to somebody recently, and it was we were talking about the goodness of the profit motive, and it's like, well, profit is good, but profit is not for profit. Profit is for something. And actually, the way you determine whether the limits of like moral profit is to ask what's profit for, and that will give you some sense of its limit. And it's not for itself. Accumulation for accumulation's sake is that's actually what the New Testament sort of freaks out about.
Yep.
Last last thing I'll say. Just one useful heuristic thing, or just kind of one way to remember, maybe to kind of detrain yourself to think materialistically, is to ask, have you ever seen matter? I remember somebody asking this, and I love the answer he gave. No, you have never seen matter. All you've ever seen are things. When you look in Wyatt's picture and our picture, what we actually are interacting with is matter given form. We're actually seeing form given to matter. You don't just find something called matter. And in fact, the types of matter that they are different. Maybe underneath there's some quantum something something or whatever. And at that level, that would be, the same thing in some ways at the level of pure, like, a chemistry dot or whatever. But the point is what is actually going on when you exist in the world is that your mind is already grabbing in the material order and pulling out of it by abstraction and giving you a relationship to a thing as a thing very consciously. You're never just relating to matter. I don't say, hey, when I fall and hit something, I never say, like, ow, I hit some matter.
Right.
I say I hit a tree. And that's actually how you relate to the world. And that's not just you putting names on top of things. That's actually you recognizing that there are natures there,
Yeah.
and
Right.
your mind just does that naturally. And it's to understand what's going. Here's another way of summarizing that: to understand what you're doing when you do that makes materialism impossible.
Wow, my mind is blown. It's a good way to stop, probably. Um, do you have anything that you need to I guess the event's already kind of too late to really advertise.
Yeah. No, I mean, you and I
Yep.
are talking about doing something down here in Florida at some point.
Right.
So,
I just want to make sure there's not a winter storm happening when I come down.
yeah, I know. Well, it's funny because Brad landed. Well, he pulled to my house and he's like, man, this is warm. And I'm like, get out, you. This is cold. I had my heater on the other night. I turned my heater on to 70 degrees because I can't do this, brother. I live near tropical. I live in the tropics because I want the tropical environment. So
right.
anyway, I'm sure
Rustling
we'll
gators,
avoid
all that.
any. We could get a hurricane. I mean, especially if we're looking to do something in the later part of the year, which that would be cool because then you should go down to the beach and drink a beer and watch the waves.
I'd be very excited for that, and we could record a
Yes.
video of ourselves confronting the hurricane. And that can be
Yes.
the news.
Yes. American flag.
Exactly.
Florida, man.
Yes.
Oh wait,
All
well,
right.
good luck, good providence tonight in the for the event is on liberty, freedom, and all that kind of
Yes,
stuff.
sir.
Yeah.
And we will talk again soon. Thanks, guys.
All right.
All right,
See you next
brother.
week.
See you later.
Bye.
Ooh, it stopped. We're good. All right, thanks, guys. I'll let you go.
Thank
I know
you,
gotta run,
brother.
said, so.
That worked.